Does this administration support a strong dollar policy or a weak dollar policy?
We always support a strong dollar policy.
Okay, that's interesting because, you know, as last time we spoke, I presented a couple of graphs which presented the historic fact that, interesting fact that every time you put a Republican in charge of in the presidency, that two things have happened: that the dollar has gotten weaker, and that manufacturing employment has dropped.
I haven't seen the data, so I can't.
Ever since Liberation Day, we have seen a continuous decline in manufacturing employment, which was one of your number one promises.
Congressman, as a manufacturer, you would know that I can't snap my fingers and create factories. So there is a building process that is well underway. I could send you the chart on the factory groundbreaking.
I understand, and the fact that we have been historically a low-tariff nation is, I believe, responsible for the really extraordinary economic growth over the last decade of the United States compared to, say, the EU, which was a high-tariff regime. And now we are joining the EU
I believe that we've exported jobs to China. So
no,
you were touching on a lot of CCP talking points.
Chair recognizes the ranking member of our Financial Institutions Subcommittee, Dr. Foster from Chicago. You're recognized 4 or 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to our witness. I mentioned in my opening remarks our recent letter to FSOC asking them to look seriously at the risks of the deflation of the AI circular investment bubble, which is something you obviously read about every time you open up any financial journal anywhere these days. I understand there was a similar letter sent recently by the Senate Democrats that received a similarly dismissive response, basically recognizing that, yeah, this is part of what we're supposed to be doing, but provided zero specifics on what you're actually doing. So how many people do you have that are actually assigned to looking at the risk of this circular financing, these off-balance sheet entities, the securitization, all of the parade of terribles that wrecked our economy last time and are looking to threaten it again? So how many people are actually working on this, and when can we expect to hear from what they've concluded?
Again, we are constantly evaluating.
How many people? How many people? Could you answer my point? How many people are actually working on that problem?
That it is in all agencies. It is in all agencies.
No answer. Okay, I understand. You're not willing to give me a number on who's actually working on it. And when do you?
I could say 2,000, but that wouldn't be correct.
It wouldn't be.
Because some people may devote an hour a day, some people may devote 80 hours a week.
All right. When can we hear something specific? When can we expect to hear something specific?
In the interest of getting back to you and a change in tone, I am happy to send you a reply.
Okay, I would appreciate something with a lot more detail than something we got from the under-assistant acting, whatever it was. All right. Also, well, last time we spoke, I asked you a simple question that I didn't get an answer to, which is, does this administration support a strong dollar policy or a weak dollar policy? And frankly, as far as I've been able to tell, you're just all over the map on this. So could you answer the question just simply, do you support a strong dollar policy or weak dollar policy? And how would you, score your, whichever way you're trying to go, how are you doing?
We always support a strong dollar policy.
Okay, that's interesting because, as last time we spoke, I presented a couple of graphs which presented the historic fact that, interesting fact that every time you put a Republican in charge in the presidency, that two things have happened: that the dollar has gotten weaker, and that manufacturing employment has dropped. And this has happened just during every Republican president in our lifetime, and the reverse has happened every Democratic president. The dollar has strengthened, actually achieved your objective instead of just talking about it. And since the time of that, actually, I think this plot here was the one we had then when the dollar was only 8%. I think it's down about 10.5% now, so you're continuing down the traditional path.
I'm sorry, which index are you using
DXY.
for the dollar?
I think it's DXY year on year.
Yeah,
and I think it's, the last time I looked at it, it was roughly down 10.5%.
And you have the president on there, but under President Clinton, it would be.
I'm not talking about.
It would be my belief that it was Speaker Gingrich and what he did.
I was just talking about the president who has control.
Working with the Clinton administration
I
together.
understand.
It's Dr. Foster's time.
Yeah. So, but you agree it is a historic fact that during those presidencies, manufacturing employment dropped, and the dollar got weaker during Republicans without exception.
I haven't seen the data, so I can't.
I
agree with you.
presented it to you on a graph. It's my understanding, actually, that later on in that hearing, after I'd left to attend a different hearing, that you said some rather negative things about the data, and that as a finance professor, that that you would have, I think, given it an F, was, I believe, your word. And so that, all right,
Probably
so now
still
I'm not a finance professor, I'm a manufacturer, okay? But I understand that the first rule of a manufacturer is you don't piss off your customers, which seems to be something that your administration just revels in doing, internationally especially. And so I think that it's easy for me to understand why manufacturing employment has continued to drop. That ever since Liberation Day, we have seen a continuous decline in manufacturing employment, which was one of your number one promises.
Congressman, as a manufacturer, you would know that I can't snap my fingers and create factories. So there is a building process that is well underway. I could send you the chart on the factory groundbreaking.
I understand, and the fact that we have been historically a low tariff nation is, I believe, responsible for the really extraordinary economic growth over the last decade of the United States compared to, say, the EU, which was a high tariff regime. And now we are joining the EU
I believe that we've
going down that
exported
road.
jobs to China, so
No,
you were touching on a lot of CCP talking points.
I think as a manufacturer who's kept jobs in the Midwest, I think I have a little more credibility in finance.
Gentleman's time has expired. Does the gentleman want something inserted in the record? Would you like that document inserted in the record? Without objection, be included in the record. Gentleman recognized is from Georgia. Mr. Loudermilk, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Vice Chairman of our Financial Institutions Subcommittee.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you again, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for being here. But before I get to my questions, I want to build on something that Mr. Lucas had talked about. This committee held a hearing in November about deposit insurance, and we had an honest conversation about the need to maintain depositor confidence, the potential costs and unintended consequences, and how we need more data before making reforms. This issue is just too important to mess up, and I hope we can continue to talk about it in a thoughtful and data-driven way. And now, onto my own questions here. Secretary Bessent, the Bank Secrecy Act, or BSA reporting modernization, is very long overdue and is required by the Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2020, otherwise known as AMLA. Increasing these outdated BSA reporting thresholds is, in my opinion, a critical component of this modernization effort. The currency transaction report requires banks to report cash transactions that exceed $10,000. That threshold has remained the same since 1972. This low-value threshold has in recent years led financial institutions to file over 20 million reports on their customers annually. And as I brought up during our recent hearing, $10,000 in 1972 was enough to buy 2 brand-new Corvettes, just to give an illustration of how inflation has affected these CTR filings. The vast majority of these reports are filed on law-abiding citizens conducting innocent transaction. And I agree with something that you've stated, that banks need to be focused on their BSA reporting, or they need to focus their BSA programs on real illicit finance risk, and that focus on higher value activities would also better serve our law enforcement and national security objectives. A few weeks ago, we had a markup in this committee and passed my bill, the Financial Reporting Threshold Modernization Act, that would responsibly raise the CTR and SAR thresholds while ensuring these reports are still useful for law enforcement. As part of your community, or your commitment to implement AMLA, will you use your authority to modernize and streamline the outdated reporting rules and increase the thresholds?
Yes, Congressman, we are studying this carefully. We look forward to working with you on it. The other thing that we are trying to do is to use common sense for geographical targeting, that we can lower thresholds with what's called a geographical targeting order for areas where we see disturbing trends like the southern border, or in Hennepin and Farley counties, St. Paul, Minneapolis.
Right. And I believe under the program, those exceptions exist to give flexibility. You've talked about the importance of creating an effective BSA program that allow financial institutions to focus on high-risk activities other than just focused examinations on paperwork. How can you ensure that our financial institutions can focus on real illicit finance risks And do you plan to consult them and law enforcement throughout your process?
Yes, we have done a very iterative process, especially with the small banks. And we've had numerous visits at Treasury. Our FinCEN group has been out on the road regionally asking for best practices, and we are working to incorporate to get the right mix of enforcement and common sense.
Well, that's good to hear because after spending almost 30 years in the IT sector, especially with data security, I've equated to the way the system is right now as looking for a needle in the haystack, where the government's default is always, well, let's just make the haystack bigger, when I believe we should make the haystack smaller so it's easier to detect the fraudulent players. Do you believe that a modernized, effective BSA regime would hinder or undermine law enforcement if we were to modernize it?
Again, if it were done in a very smart way that optimizes looking for criminal activity, not at all.
And that's really the direction I think we should be going. Eliminate the noise so we can focus on where the bad players actually are. Mr. Secretary, when can Congress expect to see the Treasury's proposed changes to the BSA program?
Congressman, I'll get back to you on that, but we are working on it with all deliberate speed.
Okay, and stand ready to help in any way that we can, and we appreciate your efforts and your service. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.